So, hello everyone, and this is video 5. Sorry for this mistake, and let's just get started with making sense of the data and going forward. This is making a strategy workbook, wording scope application, and we're still in chapter 1. We're finishing in this video. Now, given the responses from managers just noted, what does all this mean? What really affects execution? What should we focus on in subsequent chapters of this book? And the first thing I did to answer these questions was to include all items that were ranked 5th or higher in either or both samples of managers. If either or both groups felt that strongly about an execution obstacle, I felt that the item deserved consideration. The far right-hand column in table 1, the ones I told you about, the 5 ones in a past video, which I'm just going to mention in seconds, show these items. Now, I looked at the open-ended responses, panel discussions, and on my own notes taken during the Wharton programs and panel discussions to flesh out the items in table 1, and it proved to me enlightening. I determined easily that managing change included managing cultural change to many of the respondents. A point emphasized earlier, the impact of culture itself on execution and company performance was often emphasized, even though culture was not one of the 12 survey items. Now, managers basically said that culture was an underlying explanatory element in responses dealing with incentives, power, and change, items that were included in the survey. Some argued strongly for the importance of culture as a separate factor affecting execution success. Now, for these discussions and open-ended responses, I learned why there were many strong comments for certain items, such as the need for an execution model or plan. If a plan existed to guide execution efforts in their company, managers did not rank it as a significant problem. If such a plan did not exist, it was considered to be a major shortcoming that gave rise to yet additional problems in the execution process. Now, I read and heard the lamentation of many about execution problems that arise from poor strategy or inadequate planning. Vague strategies cannot easily be translated into the measurable objectives or metrics so vital to execution. Unclear corporate and business plans inhibit integration of objectives, activities, and strategies between corporate and business levels. Now, poor strategies result in poor execution plans. Points such as these derive from panel discussions and open-ended responses provided helpful insights into the meaning of the survey items and factors affecting execution. Finally, managers told me about the importance of controls or feedback into the execution process. Now, what they were emphasizing in the importance of strategy reviews that provide feedback about performance and allow for changes in execution methods. Now, these points are consistent with the importance of managing change and organizational adaptation. Issues already discussed, but the manager's additional emphasis on the importance of controls, feedback, and change were duly noted. Um, After carefully examining all the data, I then tried to cluster the items logically to see which obstacles to successful execution seem to stick together. Now, here is my take on what data seem to be saying. The execution challenge. There are 8 areas of obstacles or challenges to strategy execution, or to put it positively, there are 8 areas of opportunity. Handling them well will guarantee execution success. The areas relating to the success of execution are as follows. Now, developing a model to guide execution decisions or actions. Understanding how the creation of strategy affects the execution of strategy, and managing change effectively, including culture change, and understanding power or influence and using it for execution success. Now, developing organizational structures and that foster information sharing, coordination, and clear accountability. Developing effective controls and feedback mechanisms. Knowing how to create an execution supportive culture, and exercising execution bias leadership. Now, having a model or guidelines for execution, managers need a logical model to guide execution actions. Without guidelines, execution becomes a helter-skelter affair. It's without guidance. Individuals do the things they think that are important, often resulting in uncoordinated, divergent, even conflicting decisions and actions. Now, without the benefit of a logical approach, execution suffers or fails because managers don't know what steps to take and when to take them. Having a model or roadmap positively affects execution success. Now, strategy is the primary driver. It all begins with a strategy. Execution cannot occur until one has something to execute. A bad strategy begets poor execution and poor outcomes. So it's important to focus first on a sound strategy. Good people are important for execution. It is vital to get the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, so to speak. But it's also important to know where the bus is going and why. The strategy is very critical. It drives the development of capabilities and which people with what skills sit in what sorry and what seats on the bus. If one substitutes jet airplane for bus above, given today's high-flying competitive market, the importance of strategy, direction, and the requisite critical skills and capabilities necessary for success are emphasized even more. Now, strategy defines the arena, customers, markets, technologies, products, logistics, in which the execution game is played. Execution is an empty effort without the guidance of strategy and short-term objectives related to the strategy. Now, what aspects of strategy and planning impact execution outcomes the most is a critical question that needs answering. Another critical question deals with the relationship between corporate and business level strategies and how their interaction affects execution outcomes. Now, managing change, execution or strategy implementation often involves change. Not handling change well will spell disaster for execution efforts. Managing change means much more than keeping people happy and reducing resistance to new ideas and methods. It also means knowing the tactics or steps needed to manage the execution process over time. Do managers implement change sequentially bit by bit, or do they do everything at once? Biting the bullet and implementing change in one fell swoop. The wrong answer can seriously hamper or kill execution efforts. Knowing how to manage the execution process and related changes over time is important for execution success. Now, the power structure, execution programs that contradict the power or influence structure of an organization are doomed to failure. But what affects power or influence? Now, power is more than individual personality or position. It reflects strategy, structure, and critical dependencies on capabilities and scarce resources. Knowing what power is and how to create and use influence can spell the difference between execution success and failure. Now, coordination and information sharing, these are vital to effective execution. Knowing how to achieve coordination and information sharing in complex, geographically dispersed organizations is important in execution success. Yet, managers are often motivated not to share information or work with their colleagues to coordinate activities or achieve strategic and short-term goals. Why the answer to this question is vital to the successful execution of strategy. A clear responsibility and accountability. Now, when it comes to clear responsibility and accountability, this is one of the most important prerequisites for successful execution. As basic as it sounds, now managers must know who's doing what, when, and why, as well as who's accountable for key steps in the execution process. Now, without clear responsibility and accountability, execution programs will go nowhere. Knowing how to achieve this clarity is central to execution success. Now, the right culture. Organizations must develop execution supportive cultures. Execution demands a culture of achievement, discipline, and ownership, but developing or changing culture is no so easy task today. Now, rock climbing, whitewater rafting, paint gun paddles, and other activities with the management team are fun. They rarely, however, produce lasting cultural change. Knowing what does affect cultural change is central to execution success. Now, leadership must be execution biased. It must drive the organization to execution success. It must motivate ownership of and commitment to the execution process. Now, leadership affects how organizations respond to all the preceding execution challenges. It is always at least implied when discussing what actions or decisions are necessary to make strategy work. Now, complete analysis of execution steps and decisions usually defines what good leadership is and how it affects execution success directly or indirectly. Now, controls, feedback, and adaptation. Strategy execution process support organizational change and adaptation. Now, making strategy work requires feedback about organizational performance and then using that information to fine-tune strategy, objectives, and the execution process itself. That there is an emergent aspect of strategy and execution as organizations learn and adapt to environmental changes over time. Now, adaptation and change depend on effective execution methods, as important as controls and feedback are. Now, they often don't work, control process fail, they don't identify and confront the brutal facts underlying poor performance. Adaptation is haphazard or incomplete. Understanding how to manage feedback, strategy reviews, and change is vital to the success of strategy execution. Now, these are the issues that impact the success or failure of strategy execution efforts, coupled with the issues previously mentioned, longer time frames, involvement of many people, and so on. Now, these are the areas that present formidable obstacles to successful execution if they're not handled properly. They also present opportunities for competitive advantage if they are understood and managed well. Now, the last words, managed well, hold the key to success. Knowing the obstacles or potential opportunities is necessary, but not sufficient. Now, the real issue is how to deal with them to generate positive execution results. Now, the major significant point or thrust of this chapter is that execution is not managed well in most organizations. The remainder of this book is dedicated to correcting this woeful situation. And the next step is developing a logical approach to execution decisions and actions. So where and how does one begin to confront the issues just noted? Now, which execution problems or opportunities should managers consider first? What decisions or actions come later? Why can an approach to strategy execution be developed to guide managers through the maze of obstacles and problematical issues just identified? Now, the next chapter begins to tackle these questions. It presents an overview, a conceptual framework to guide execution decisions and actions. Managers need such a model because they routinely face a bewildering set of decisions about a host of strategic and operating problems, including those dealing with execution. They need guidelines, a roadmap to steer them logically to execution success. Now, priorities are also needed. Tackling too many execution decisions or actions at once will surely create problems. When everything is important, then nothing is important. Now, is a clear but simple way of expressing the issue. When everything is important, then nothing is important. Now, priorities must be set in a logical order to execution actions adequately defined if execution is to succeed. Now, having a model finally also facilitates a simultaneous view of planning and doing. All execution actions cannot be taken at once, and some must precede others logically. A good overview or model, however, provides a big picture that enables managers to see and anticipate execution problems. Now, the execution is not something that others should worry about later. Planning requires anticipating early on what must be done to make strategy work, and development of a logical overview is a step that has been ignored by practitioners in academics, management consultants alike. Execution problems or issues typically have been handled separately or in ad hoc fashion, supported by a few anecdotes or case studies. Now, this is not sufficient.